What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. I'm LotusAsakura, the one who never knows best, and the video you're about to watch is all about super counter in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. This is a mechanic that I feel very strongly about and have a lot of strong opinions on, and I've been wanting to talk about it for a minute, but I decided that I didn't want to do it alone, and so today I'm going to be joined by Dom, who is a very high-level player right now in Sparking Zero. He's won a few tournaments, he's top-8'd several others as well. I think in the most recent TNS, he actually just got second. So he's, he knows a thing or two about the game and how it's played, and I kind of want to get his thoughts and opinions and pick his brain a little bit about this mechanic, because it's kind of like the most controversial thing right now in the game. It's one of the hottest topics of conversation. I've spoken about it a lot. I've seen a lot of conversation about it on Twitter. I've chimed in. Several other creators and players have made videos talking about this mechanic, and you guys mostly know where I'm coming from, but we're going to dive into all of that here today. If you want to check out Dom, links to his stuff will be in the description, and down below we can go ahead and check him out. But yeah, man, it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully you guys do as well. So check it out.
What's up, guys? Dom here. Like Lotus just said, appreciate the introduction. I've been streaming a lot more lately. I consider myself a quote-unquote top Sparking Zero player. I really don't like saying that because I do agree with Lotus's opinion that the game isn't really competitive, especially in its current state. But I do feel like I have somewhat of a objective opinion on the game, and I played it for a good amount of time, made some content on it, so I would like to help out Lotus here in terms of discussing the super counters.
Hey, he said it, not me. I brought Vox on because he is one of the best players in the game right now. If you've been around in the community, if you've seen some tournaments, he's won multiple of them at this point. And before we get too deep into this, let me know, by the way, who are some other people in the community that I should reach out to and have these discussions with, or that you'd like to see on the channel, some other high-level players who might have some interesting opinions, even if they are opinions that conflict with my own, because honestly, I'm not opposed to being challenged on my ideas. That being said, super counter, okay? I want to preface this by saying I do not want infinite combos in the game, okay? I do not have an issue with some sort of combo breaker mechanic existing in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I may even go so far as to say that it is a necessity. With the way that this game functions and being able to get behind your opponent or making them go back turn or whatever and getting combos, yes, if you do not have some sort of combo breaker mechanic or way to escape, I could see how this game could be very one-sided in offense's favor and how you would just have no means to fight back or defend yourself. I have to preface this video by saying that because anytime I bring up my feelings or my opinions about super counter or mention how I would like to see it change or something, I always have people go, so you just want people to get infinite. You just want people to never be able to get a combo. Like, no, I never said that. I never said that, bro. Why do people always read super deep into things I say when I don't want them to, and then when I want somebody to take some at face value, they never do? Why does the internet work this way? Regardless, we're gonna start off by saying I am personally of the opinion that super counter, as it currently stands in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, is a little overpowered and could stand to be changed. Now, with that being said, I will note that my opinion has been constantly evolving, obviously, on the game and its mechanics as it has been out and as days go by. And I understand and realize that part of the changes I want to see in my feelings and my perspective come from the fact that I also have a lot of investment in more traditional fighting games. So by default, my brain kind of wants to make it more that way, even though this isn't a traditional fighting game. And so I want to see there be situations where you are guaranteed some sort of combo. But this game isn't necessarily trying to be like that, so I can accept that. That doesn't mean that I can't have my own opinions, and that's largely what this is going to be about. It is an opinion at the end of the day, so if you disagree, feel free to let me know. But what are your overall thoughts right now on super counter, Dom?
So, my primary issue with super counter as it currently stands is the fact that it's spammable during hit stun. So, when you're getting hit, the fact that you can just relentlessly do the up square input on a loop, and you can RNG get the input to come out and just instantly get out of a combo is a bit ridiculous to me. I would agree with the sentiment that you should be getting rewarded for winning the neutral, and you should get a punish as a result of it, you know? It doesn't have to be an extended combo like you said, and it doesn't have to be an infinite combo, but you should be at least getting some type of reward, and in exchange, the opponent shouldn't be able to break out of the combo immediately. I think that at the worst, if it is going to be a resourceless combo breaker, it should be a one-frame input that isn't spammable, which is how it was in Tenkaichi 3. It had a larger window for, or I suppose I should say, it had a larger lockout window, meaning that it was not a spammable input, and you'd have to actually get the one-frame timing on their active frames. So if you did miss the active frames when you did the input, then you'd get locked out of the input for, I don't remember the exact amount of frames, I think it was 12 frames on 30 FPS. And then you wouldn't be able to do it anymore for a while. So essentially, I think that the possible solutions are either doing that and making it a more difficult input to get out of during hit stun, or making it cost some type of resource, obviously. So essentially, it comes down to it being a resourceless combo breaker that is extremely easy to input, which makes the defensive, how should I say it? The counterplay to the punish game is far too easy and far too accessible. So yeah, I mean, that's essentially what I would say about it.
Right, and I will say, he mentioned that he says it's far too easy, and I understand, and I want to say this as well. There are obviously players out there who are struggling to this input, because I believe you have a 4-frame window to actually input the super counter. I get it. Not everybody's being able to do that every single time on command. Players are obviously getting better and better, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there have made some progress in your ability to perform this. But as he said, it is a resourceless combo breaker that you can use pretty much whenever you want. And yes, you do have to time it to a degree, but not really, because you can't just keep mashing it, and eventually you will get it.
Exactly.
I actually have a quote here from a Grand Master Hawk that I'm going to read to you guys. Okay, so if you don't know who Grand Master Hawk is, first and foremost, he is a very prolific Budokai Tenkaichi 3 player. And it's interesting because a lot of the argument or like counter I see to things and opinions I have is people saying like, oh, but it was like this in Tenkaichi 3 or Tenkaichi 3 this. They bring up Tenkaichi 3 a lot. Well, this is straight from the not the mouth because it's typed, but the fingertips of one of the best players in Tenkaichi 3, and it covers a piece of what Dom just touched on himself here. This quote I actually got from a video from a YouTuber by the name of Tymier, who maybe I could reach out to him and have him on the channel at some point. But he apparently spoke to Grandmaster Hawk, and Grandmaster Hawk had this to say, and I'll even show this on screen for you guys now here on YouTube. It reads as such, okay? Tenkaichi 3's cooldown is 25 frames. Assuming that's on 60 FPS. And if you press up square during those 25 frames, it would reset and you would have to wait another 25 frames. So you could not, this is me saying this now, you could not just spam it, because if you did and didn't actually time it, you would just continue to get locked out of being able to perform the move at all. If we want everything to just be like Tenkaichi 3, maybe we should go back to being that, but I digress. Sparking Zero's cooldown is apparently 12 frames, which is half that. And because the game runs 60 FPS, it's therefore much more accessible and can even be mashed by the player. I've seen a couple of people with their keyboard or pad just mashing it after each missed attempt most of the time, which I'm sure is how 99% of us are all doing it. Admittedly, I am as well, because it's like, yeah, you're trying to time it with your opponent's hits, but you're still doing it multiple times throughout, as opposed to just trying to do it that one time. I messed up, wait the cooldown, boom, let me try it again. You're like, you're constantly spamming it. I know I am, I know you are, most players are. Don't even lie to me, okay? Very, very few people are actually going, boom, boom, like just doing it one time and just getting it on command. There's some people out there who I know you might be nasty like that. 99% of us are not. While I think the cooldown should probably be increased to 15 frames, I also believe it should cost half a key bar and not just a quarter one. This will bring down the length of time it takes for a Vanish War, and they should also change the fact that during sparking mode, when you perform the Vanish, your key bar pauses. If you're in a Vanish War, the key bar should be depleting indefinitely, but it pauses for a moment during the character's Vanish frames. I don't know if you spawned to that or not. I saw some people saying in your chat, he was referring to Tymier, I saw some people saying in your chat that it's hard enough to execute. Maybe this is just me as a Tenkaichi veteran and skilled player talking, but I personally feel it's become too easy. I'm not asking them, Bandai, to make it super difficult. There's no way to truly distinguish the skilled from the novices with this mechanic in its current state. Everything else about it is fine. Vanish Wars personally don't bother me that much. I just think most people think they're boring. I don't have a huge issue that Vanish War exists. I just think from a fun standpoint, from a spectator standpoint, it's just not really interesting. But they're definitely hella boring when every single person can super counter effortlessly, and for those of us that can do it consistently, it makes all the gameplay look identical. There's hardly any unique gameplay due to this mechanic. Now, I definitely agree with him to some degree about the mechanic being too easy, quote unquote, because it's like, even though the timing is tight, it ultimately doesn't matter, because yeah, you might not get it at the start of a person's combo every single time, but if you do it enough with reasonable, like, you know, timing is in terms of like the animations of your character getting hit, you're going to eventually get it. I made a tweet the other day speaking on it, saying that if I could change anything gameplay wise about it, bugs and glitches aside, that super counter would probably be the thing that I would address. I got a decent amount of pushback on that, and you know, someone challenged me and said that you know, the resource or the cost for it is the execution. And I said it here, I said it there, and I'll say it here. I am personally of the opinion that the execution required for it is not high enough to warrant the strength or overall power of the mechanic. I think the power of super counter supersedes or exceeds the execution requirement for it, especially because you can just do it over and over and over. So yeah, it's a four frame window for the input, but like, does that really matter if you can just do it over and over and over again? Like, yeah, okay, there might be some scenarios where you don't get it when you want and you do die to a combo because you were low on health, but outside of that, I don't really think the execution matters that much. And here's what I'll say about that. Instead of making it more difficult to do, which was an idea I had before, and like if they want to change some of the input windows, that makes sense. I think allowing it to be accessible to the player but making it cost a resource is the better way of going about it. Because like if you think about combo breaker mechanics from other games like Burst and Guilty Gear, or like a literal combo breaker in like Mortal Kombat or KI or whatever, it's not like those are difficult inputs to do. Most of the time it's just one button, or maybe pushing like all 4 of the face buttons at the same time, and it's just a resource that you have and you have to build that back up. Again, I'm not saying this game has to be a traditional fighting game, but I think it would actually make more sense to do it that way, for the accessibility of the casual player to still be able to do it, but not just be able to do it constantly, making it so that combos don't exist in the game. Thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much fully agree with it. I think it does have to be one of two ways. If they don't want to take the route of making the input more difficult or making it so that it's not accessible during hit stun, then making it cost a resource is the alternative. And I think the resource cost can be a little bit of a slippery slope. I think they'd have to actually play around that wisely, because, for example, let's say I'm getting comboed and then I super counter and that takes X amount of my key bar, and then you vanish. That vanish has to take more than the super counter. Otherwise, there's no reason for me to super counter.
Right.
Because you're going to be losing the Vanish Ward by default since you're using Ki to get the super counter. So if I have more Ki than you and I aggress you and I win the neutral, you're just going to get looped in the same way that's currently happening.
That's a really good point that I never actually considered, because, again, because of the strength of the mechanic, I was like, yeah, super counter should cost like 2-3 bars, which I'm just talking, and that's obviously a lot. But I didn't even think of that, because like vanishing is so cheap, and super counter can obviously easily be vanished. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, so I think to compensate for this, what I wrote down is that super counter, I said reduce leniency during hit stun. Whether or not they implement that is obviously up to them, because I'm not sure whether or not they want to make it more difficult to do. But if they don't want to do that, then I would say that a super counter should not be vanishable. So at like face value, this might seem kind of weird, but if you get hit by the super counter and it does take some sort of meter, then that should just be it. Like, it's a combo breaker and that's it. There's no counterplay to the combo breaker. Generally speaking, in traditional fighters, you can bait out combo breakers. Like in Strive, obviously, you can like burst bait and whatnot. But in this game, I think that baiting out a super counter that costs meter would be sort of difficult to implement, at least with the current game mechanics. So that in such a way that if you do vanish it, it shouldn't be something that you get rewarded for. Like, if super counter costs more meter than vanishing, then there's no point in super countering, right? But at the same time, if you can't vanish a super counter, then okay, they get their combo breaker, it's a reset to neutral, you have more Ki, you can still play more offensively than they can.
That also then effectively puts an end to the Vanish War, because if you can just successfully just super counter the Vanish, then
it's a neutral reset.
Yeah, I like that a lot. See, you know what I'm saying? He be thinking what he be thinking, you feel me?
Yeah, and I think, I guess as an aside, because obviously the topic of our conversation isn't about the Vanish/Z counter, but the Z counter, if that change is made, then I guess as a nuance to that, the Vanish Wars can just happen in such a way that you vanish something. So for example, if they do a Vanishing Strike, you just vanish behind them and that's it. There's no extra hit that causes the Vanish War to engage, right? Like, so I press X square, you vanish it, as in you time the input, and then you just vanish it and you go behind me. Simple as that. And we're just trading Ki at that point. You get behind me, you get the back shots because you time properly, and that's it. But this can only be allowed if super counter is unvanishable. If super counter is vanishable, then obviously once again you get to that same dead end where it's like, okay, why would I super counter then? I super counter, they vanish behind me, and there's no vanish ward, there's no way for me to win. But yeah, if super counter is unvanishable, then I think this kind of circumvents the entire issue. That's my perspective though.
Yeah, I never thought of it like, because there are multiple ideas and like thoughts I've had about super counter, and like I said, it's been constantly evolving and progressing. I think that's a genius solution, honestly, and now I'm going to be very disappointed when that's not how the game ever ends up actually working.
Yeah, see, it's a lot of theory crafting and obviously stuff that might not ever happen, but I mean, yeah, like I said, if it does cost meter, then making it cost meter but not it being punishable by something that costs less meter would make it ideal. Alternatively, you could make vanishing cost more than super counters, which would, you know, kind of produce the same results. It wouldn't solve the issue of the Vanish Wars, but it would solve the issue of super counter being extremely easy to do, while also being vanishable.
It would cut down the vanish war a little bit because obviously the more key it takes, the less vanishes you'd be able to do. So like
Exactly.
while it doesn't eliminate it, it would at least shorten the length of time to which that's going on. Which I think it going on for so long and you just constantly vanishing. I mean, that's why people don't like it in the first place. So it does still help.
Indeed. And just sorry to interrupt you there.
No,
but,
no, you're good.
I was gonna say for number-wise, I would say that it costing 1 bar to vanish and then half a bar to super counter would probably be a good intermediary between the two in order to keep it like balanced. So let's say we both have full key, you super counter me, that costs half a bar, and then I have to vanish it, that would cost 1 bar, and then you decide to vanish war with me, you'd end up winning the interaction because you got the super counter. But at the same time, like, it's not such a one-sided defensive win because I'm using so much key in the first place to get out of the combo. And I would say that winning neutral would still have the advantage in that theoretical situation.
I like that. I do want to address one thing as well, because I've gone on record multiple times to say that in my ideal world, super counters doesn't even exist. And I want to bring this up because I'm sure someone's going to challenge me on it or acknowledge it in the comments if I don't. So again, as prefaced at the start of this video, I didn't say something like I want super counter to be removed because I just want people to you lose neutral once and you're just getting comboed forever into a TOD. You just die. It's not that I didn't want a combo breaker mechanic in the game. There's context to that. When I said things like, if in my ideal world I would remove super counter, it was always followed up or prefaced with I would buff revenge counter and just make revenge counter the combo breaker mechanic that already exists in the game. Like I would just I didn't really understand why we needed revenge counter and super counter, and then super counter just being as good as it is and is obviously costing a lot less resource kind of made revenge counter obsolete in the majority of scenarios.
I wanted to touch on that because before this game came out, I said revenge counter was going to be really, really bad. I remember talking to Afro about it. He was like, nah, it's good. I was like, bro, trust me, it's going to be trash. And then it ended up being really bad. But now I'm kind of having second thoughts. After playing against Slime, who I consider to be like, one of the best players in NA right now as well. Revenge counter has a really interesting spot in the meta, especially in Vanish Wars, because let's say I have less key, and he's obviously going to win the Vanish War. It's actually good to take the hit and then just revenge counter before you get knocked away. That way they can't get the resets on you.
That is the one place where I also have recently started to realize that it has its strength, because again, at surface level, when the game first comes out, you're just like, oh, this is a combo breaker. And it is, but it's really not useful for that. But I have been fighting players recently who use it to to beat the knockback, and I'm like, oh, that's one situation where it is actually. Now, is that worth 2 skill gauge? I don't know. I guess that's up for debate. I guess in certain situations it is. Is it worth it every time? Probably not. But that is where I think it has the most use it has right now.
I think that, and when they have sparking, if they're spamming key blasts at you, then that's a really good spot to use it as well, because you get the dragon dash.
True. Yeah. So I originally I had ideas where it was like, oh, I would just this was something I was saying and didn't believe would ever actually happen in the game. I was like, oh, in my ideal world that wouldn't actually happen, just if we're just dreaming and I'm just redesigning the game. I would remove super counter and just buff revenge counter so that it works if somebody's behind you as well. And then I just feel like then you don't need super counter in the first place, and you still have this accessible mechanic that every level of player can still use, but it costs a resource, and so part of the skill in using it is your resource management. And boom, and to me, that was solved. Because I also am of the belief or the opinion that the existence of all these different defensive mechanics, particularly super counter, is a reason why certain matches, especially DP battle, go on for so long. I've been playing ranked a bit more these last couple of days, and I'm noticing that, for one, stalling is obviously very prevalent, but even when players aren't stalling, I had a couple of matches with players who were we were trying to whoop each other, you know what I'm saying? We were throwing hands, we was boxing, and the matches would still go to timeout or near to timeout. And it's because since you're able to always get out of a combo, you're not dealing damage as frequently or as consistently and getting these full length combos, and so it's harder to kill characters. Characters are staying alive a lot longer. Than also you have characters who can regen or whatever, and then when you tag out, your characters are also healing.
Yes. Yep.
And I was like, okay, well, what if they just remove the ability for your characters to heal while they're tagging, or they slowed it down?
Oh, dude, that's so funny you mentioned that, because that is one of the changes that I proposed as well. I said for switching, reduce HP gain during switching.
Yeah. And I was like, maybe that would help speed it up, so that characters aren't staying alive as long. Because as it currently stands, I was like, okay, it's not like they're going to remove super counter, and I don't, have a lot of faith that it's going to change in any drastic way that's going to speed up the game. But I have been seeing complaints around the community of people saying DP battles take too long, And then in my experience, while I don't mind the length of the matches itself, the problem I do have is like matches are ending due to timeout, even when players aren't trying to do that intentionally. It's like that. Like we're trying to kill each other, but we can't do it quickly enough.
I actually think the most fundamental issue, as we've said before, is the Vanish Wars. Like the Vanish Wars take such an exorbitant amount of time. It's literally the. But there is something to mention though, and it's actually something that I wanted to ask you. So, what I've come to the conclusion of recently after playing against Slime, like especially when I play against Slime, because we have very similar playstyles and we kind of. I don't want to say we solved the game, but like the playstyle that we employ during our matches, it really feels like a flowchart. It doesn't really feel like I'm playing RPS very often. It kind of just feels like, okay, I'm in this position. I know I'm about to win if I execute properly. And as a result, it's like, okay, let's say both players have 5 key bars, you know, full key, and one person gets the hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
The person that gets the hit is at a disadvantage because here's the thing, if I get the hit on you, you're going to be able to super counter, which doesn't cost anything. If I don't super counter your super counter back and I choose to vanish, then I'm going to be at a key disadvantage, which means I lose the Vanish War. And as soon as that happens, the damage that you got on me, whether it be, you know, in 5 hits, 10 hits, or 14 hits, X amount of hits that you hit me with before I super countered, that's all going to be mitigated by the Vanish War, because I'm going to win the Vanish War, and if I'm playing a character like MUI Goku, Full Power Jiren, etc., they get 4 follow-ups on their vanishes, which does around 10k damage, which is more than a full combo. Not only that...
by the way, I didn't know that they got 4, by the way.
Yeah, they get 4 follow-ups. They get 4 follow-ups, which is why they're so OP.
Naturally.
And actually, that's... just as an aside real quick to that, a lot of people think playing weak DP characters is actually really good. At the highest level, I think playing high DP characters and playing around your key, winning these Vanish Wars, you're going to speed run a lot of these lower DP characters. The thing is, you have to be playing this very flowcharty playstyle. Like you can't be playing the game normally trying to win neutral interactions, wasting key. You have to be always on top of your key and winning these Vanish Wars. Once you win these Vanish Wars, you're gonna not only are you gonna win the Vanish War, because of the fact that you gain so many skill points during Vanish Wars, you're gonna be able to go into sparking. So in that theoretical that I just proposed, where I super countered the opponent and I had more key and I win the Vanish War and I get 10k damage as a result of the follow-ups, not only that, after that, since he decided to play the Vanish War with me, I'm gonna have 3 skill points to go into Insta-Spark. And there's no counterplay to that, unless you revenge counter me. But then the revenge counter loses to stuff like Perception. So like, you know, we're both building skill points. Let's say you revenge counter to not get knocked back, so I don't get Insta-Spark. I Perception you, and then I get 3 more follow-ups. So now you're taking 20k damage instead of 10k damage.
The defensive mechanics in this game are very funny. I'm sorry, go on.
I agree. So yeah, so you just add that on top of Insta-Spark, that's 1 character dead. And that was just a whole flowchart off of 1 super counter. The game can end off 1 super counter like that. But the question that I wanted to ask you is, there is something about the game that kind of makes offense be at an advantage, and it's the fact that you gain key while you're hitting the opponent. So there's stuff that you can do like sweep loops, just keeping them in a loop of sweeps, for example, to constantly gain key, sweep, and then charge key. But the end goal of all of that is to have more key for the Vanish War. Because as of right now, nobody's playing at the point where they're just super countering everything, like super counters ad infinitum.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a Vanish War. And during that Vanish War, it's going to come down to who has more key. And that's the advantage, quote unquote, that the offensive player has, because they're able to build more key while they're on the offense to win the Vanish War. So I was just wondering what your opinion on that is.
My opinion remains the same as I've seen before. We need to tweak Super Counter and the Vanish Wars.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I've gone on record to say that I think at the highest level, this game actually isn't the most exciting or interesting to watch because of
I agree.
things like that. Whether it's the character choices, like, oh, everyone's just going to play, you know, some cheesy shit like Z Broly or Dr. Wheeler or whatever. But even if, let's say, like, you have, like, the fusions, which are obviously very, very strong, or regardless of what the character is, like, that flowchart you just outlined is like, that is what the high level looks like in this game right now. That's what some of the best players are doing, and I don't think that's exciting or interesting for most people. Now, you guys out there, some of you may disagree, and if you do, that's fine. I don't enjoy it that much, and I don't think most people do, even the people who are playing it. So, I mean, Dom right here is himself saying like, it's really not that interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to vanish for all day. I'm not gonna lie to you. The fun of the game to me is the fact that, you know, despite all of its flaws, despite all of its broken mechanics and whatnot, at its most fundamental, there is a neutral game and there is a punish game. It's just so heavily mitigated by the fact that there's absurd mechanics that make it so that it turns into a mini game, right? So like, to get that first hit, you actually do have to play neutral. You know, sidestep speed, or like, how should I say this? Instant timing combo, as in just pressing square as soon as you're in range of the opponent, loses to instant timing sidestep. Delayed timing hits beats delayed instant timing sidestep, and then instant timing, RPS in that way, right? Like, and key blast beats this, stuff like that. But grab losing to perception because you can grab break out of perception. It's stuff like this that kind of makes the neutral fundamentally flawed.
Which, by the way, you should not be able to break a throw when you're doing perception. If I throw you while you're doing perception, that should be a guaranteed unbreakable throw. Oh, it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. And like, I know that's my fighting game brain be like, oh, he did this parry. This throw should be unbreakable. But like, that just makes sense. That just makes sense. Like, it should be a punish. I'm sorry.
It's not even a fighting game thing. It's just logical.
Oh,
like,
man.
It's literally just logic. And this is the stuff that pisses me off too, because like, I know that the game can be like decent, like you can play it like a fighting game, but the thing is, the mechanics themselves are so fundamentally broken as a result of the way that they were designed that it makes it hard to actually play that game, and it just makes it so that you're playing around the mechanics rather than playing around the opposing player. And that's kind of the fundamental issue.
Okay, this is why I need to get somebody else on the channel who like doesn't agree with anything that I'm saying, because like you're just like taking the words right out of my head. And just like, I've had some people tell me that I'm just creating this echo chamber, which is all the more reason. Like, first of all, that's bullshit. Second of all, like, I need somebody to challenge me more, because like this is cathartic for me right now. You don't understand.
Okay, here. I'll throw a wrench in your plans in that case, in order to make it not seem like I'm hive minding everything you're saying and propagating it. So, I do think it's a fighting game. I think it's a fighting game 100%. I do think it can be competitive. Okay, so here, I guess we can quote unquote argue that, because I don't want to get too off topic, because obviously the topic of discussion is super countering. But I think that a fighting game composes of two elements. There's neutral game and there's a punish game. I think that a traditional fighting game, as in a 2D fighting game, is different than a Narita fighting game, and I also think that a 3D fighting game is different than a 2D fighting game. However, having those two elements, in my opinion, composes a fighting game. I think there are sub-variants and sub-elements that can compose a more quote-unquote traditional fighting game, such as RPS and things of the sort. But I think all of these sets, if we're looking at it from like a set theory perspective, can be composed, or rather, essentially you can put these sub-elements into neutral or into punish. So like reaction time, RPS, conditioning, etc. These are all things that can be put into these clusters. But like I was saying before, the mechanics are so fundamentally flawed that you're not really seeing much of it. It ends up becoming a party game, right? So I do agree with you, but there are parts of me that want to say, yeah, this is still a fighting game. It's just it doesn't really look like one when you're actually playing it.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like one at times either. But I'm not even gonna like fight back on like whether or not it's a fighting game. Like I'll concede and say that it's a fighting game. I don't have strong feelings about that either. The only reason why I like make certain distinctions is because like I feel like there's a lack of there's not like a universal understanding of what we mean when we're using certain terms and phrases and everything. Like even when it comes to like the whole, is the game competitive or not? Is it a fighting game or not? Yes, the game is competitive. Yes, it's a fighting game, but like not in the same way that we mean that Tekken is a fighting game.
Right.
And that
it's
Tekken is competitive. Thing. Yeah, it's semantic. And like I've tried to like create that understanding or like establish what that distinction of that difference is. Some people won't listen to reason, like intentionally. They're being willfully ignorant, and some people just don't get it no matter how I try to break it down. And then some people are like, oh, okay, I understand what you mean now. And like, that's what I'm aiming for. It's not even about elitism, like trying to create this class system or something like that. I'm just trying to get people to understand, like, there's a difference when we're talking about it. And I'm trying to get you to understand what the difference is. It's not about like downplaying what this game is or saying that it doesn't deserve respect or anything. Like, that's not, bro, I love anime games. I have damn near all. Okay, there's a few in these last few years I haven't been buying because, come on now, I'm not playing Curse Clash. But like I've been playing these games since the PS1, bro. In the video where we talked about it, like I got Budokai 1 through Tenkaichi 3, Burst Limit, RB 1 and 2, all the Ultimate Ninja games, all the Storm games. Like I've been here, and as y'all know, this channel's primarily built off traditional fighting games. So like I've been around the block a couple times. I'm not trying to put one over the other, bro. I like them both. But I digress. That being said, I think this was a great discussion. I think we have an agreement that like Super Counter in its current form, I honestly believe it's problematic. Some people don't seem to feel the same way, but it's funny because yourself, Grand Master Hawk, who's a high-level Tenkaichi 3 player, and I would presume a high-level Sparking player, and some of the people you've also spoken with seem to agree that Super Counter could stand to be changed in some capacity. I don't think it creates for an interesting dynamic between players or interesting gameplay currently, and I think that it could be tweaked to prolong the longevity of the game and just create a healthier, more fun environment for both spectator and player, as well as for the casual and the high level. So that's kind of how I feel. Any closing thoughts or remarks or statements you want to give to the people?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much 100% agree. There's obviously going to be differing perspectives on whether or not how it should be changed and whether it should be changed or not. But I do agree with the final thing you said, where it's like, it does need to be changed in the sense that everybody's benefiting from it. And that's something that fundamental that I think is important for people to know, in the sense that there are changes that, like higher level players would want, that actually would benefit, the majority of the player base. At least from speaking to my friends that, play the game on a casual level as well, they experience the same troubles and annoyances and grievances in the game that I do. So it's definitely more universal than you'd think, right? And as lastly, I just wanted to say that I do think that the Vanish Wars and the Super Counter Wars, all of these various different elements and mechanics in the game are kind of like interconnected, and changing them one by one and making small tweaks within them is enough to make changes to other parts of the game, which would, ameliorate the game state in a meaningful way. So, yeah.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, I greatly appreciate you for joining me here on the channel again today. I'm going to have to get you on again soon with us for games or future discussions, because I enjoy this a lot, and hopefully the people out there enjoy this as well. Man, I feel like there's even still more I could say that I forgot to bring up that I wanted to, because again, I have so many thoughts and opinions on this game, and like those only increase and evolve more as I continue to play. Okay, so something I do want to tack on here at the end as editor Lotus is something that I didn't outright say in this video, and it's something that Vox and I were both basically saying, but without outright stating it, but I want to outright state it for anybody who didn't take that away from this video, and that is that Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is already getting to a point where at the high level between top players, it is coming down to a war of attrition between Super Counter and Z Vanish. Okay, it's interesting to me that most people seem to agree that Vanishing needs to be tweaked in some capacity, because the extended Vanish Wars are like boring, uninteresting, take up too much time, away from the match and actual combat. It's not engaging, it's not fun to watch, it's not fun to do. You know what I'm saying? And and once you get into your muscle memory, you don't even have to look at the screen to do it at that point. You know what I mean? Most people seem to not like Vanishing as it currently exists in the game. They want to see it changed. So it's weird to me then that so many people feel differently than I do about Super Counter, or than like some of the higher players do, because they go hand in hand. This game is getting to a point where the Vanish War and Super Counter are like the deciding factors for the game, and then the game's only going to continue to progress that way as players get better with those timings and being able to do that more consistently. And we're already at a point where I'm seeing clips of people do 4, 3, 4, 5, 6 super counters back to back to back. They're doing it at the start of a combo. They're doing it in reaction to vanishes, etc., etc. And I don't think that's what people want this game to be, or what it comes down to. Like you know what I'm saying? Like I even see my homie Balvin playing just yesterday. You know what I'm saying? And he did like 3 or 4 consecutive super counters on someone's vanish and then killed him. You know what I'm saying? Like is that. Like, that might be hype the first time you see it, but I don't think that's what you want 90% of matches to be. And I know that I don't. So they go hand in hand. Like, yeah, the Z counters need to be tweaked in some capacity. I think most people agree with that. But if you agree with that, I would then think you have to agree that super counter is also problematic as being the solution that's not actually a solution, because they're both problems. Like, I don't know if I'm not making sense or what, but I feel like if you agree that one is an issue, the other one is also an issue, because like they literally are intertwined. But like Dom said, you know what I'm saying, if you can make small changes here that will affect the game as a whole. And I really like his suggestion earlier about, making it cost a resource, but you can't vanish it, and then it either resets to neutral, or like you just straight up one player has the advantage, whatever the case is. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are so many different things you could do. I really like that idea in particular, and hopefully they do it. They probably won't though, but I do feel like if they don't make some sort of change akin to that, then this game is going to get to a point where that's all it's going to be: Vanishing and Super Counter. And yeah, you could say, oh, but that's Dragon Ball. Sure, buddy, that's Dragon Ball the first couple times you see it, and after a while it just becomes boring. Like, I don't think that's fun for really anybody. And like, some players like Dom himself are already finding that uninteresting to do themselves as a match, and also fight against that. So I don't know, it is what it is. Anyway, past me, go ahead and take us home. Go ahead and check out Dom or Vox. Like I said, links to his stuff will be in the description down below. Hit this video with a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already, so you can stay tuned for all the awesome content I'm bringing you. But with all that being said, that's pretty much all I have today. And remember, nothing could happen to you swing the bat. Later.